Well, welcome everyone. Happy afternoon. Thank you all for being here. Alex, you were on this stage a year ago today to talk about the highly anticipated season 1 of Unrivaled. And today I'm so excited to be able to talk about season 1, what you all went through, the amazing success, season 2, what we have ahead. But before we get to that, I hear you have a bit of breaking news to share with all of us.
We do, and we have a new member of our team to announce, and one thing she told me is she doesn't like the spotlight, so I said, perfect. What we're going to do is we're going to roll you out, we're going to put music to it, you're probably going to have to dance, and that's how we're going to kind of see if you can, swim or sink. So without further ado, we are very excited to announce our first ever CMO of Unrivaled, who is Liz Morrow. Come on down.
Hey Liz, welcome and
Hello.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
We're so excited to
I think
have you
people
on.
thought you were going to be Caitlin Clark.
That was going to be my joke. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not Caitlin.
I want to start with you, Liz. What drew you to this opportunity and what do you see as your biggest focus out the gate?
Well, who wouldn't want to work for Unrivaled, right? Just the previous 5 minutes excluded, I think. But when I was wrapping up my previous career, I was in sports betting and fantasy sports for about 10 years. It's a very aggressive, competitive space, and sort of thinking about what I wanted to do for my next move. And Unrivaled is kind of just like a dream opportunity for me. I think, obviously the mission is incredible, but the business is incredible too, and there's upside, and I'm getting in at a point where there's a ton of growth, and the team is really talented and small, and there's just a lot of room for impact. So I'm on, week 2, but very, very excited to be here and excited to see how the league grows from, even season 1, season 2, and then season 2 to season 3.
Yeah, amazing. And you're on week 2 after a week coming off of a lot of big announcements.
A lot of big news.
Yeah, exciting news. Before we get there, Alex, I want to start with season 1. In your own words, what did season 1 demonstrate?
I think when we first started, we tried to figure out what's the true value prop here. And I think, I'm sure a number of people hear me say it, but the athletes are such value drivers. And unlike most new leagues trying to figure out, A, it's a new sport coming into the fold, or B, it's an entirely new cast of players. Like we have 36 now, soon 52 to be the most impactful, influential women in sports. So the marketing engine around that was obvious to me. So for me, it was, we had such conviction that women's basketball had this incredible fandom. There's certainly an opening in the calendar. And quite honestly, we just knew that there was enough fan interest that was delivered from an individual standpoint that would lead to our success. Most people, when we first pitched it, they're like, well, you need to have cities associated with the teams. And it was something that we were very much against because our stance was always, well, we only have 6 teams, so now you have 6 cities that have a reason to care, but you have all these other cities and demographics of women's basketball fans and fans of these athletes that don't feel the same incentive to care. So for us, it was, I think the success was all driven around, we had the conviction of the athletes, and the athletes were playing, and it was highly competitive.
And Liz, I know you were touching on this, like who wouldn't want to come to Unrivaled and be part of something so significant like this? What made you excited to join Unrivaled following the season Alex just described?
I think as a marketer, what you really, what makes your job easier and what makes you look really good at your job is when the product is really good and when there's natural, organic excitement. And if you look at what Unrivaled did in season 1 with no marketing infrastructure, it's pretty impressive. So, my job is just to expand the awareness and the reach and trying to get even more eyeballs on season 2. And I just have so much to work with. I have all these incredible players. I have this incredible brand that's been developed. I have all these incredible partners. So, I don't want to overpromise, but I can't imagine it's going to be that hard to really grow.
Alex, last year was about proving the concept. This year really feels like a scale-up moment, though. What surprised you about the response to season 1?
I don't know if there was anything that really surprised me other than the amount of fans that traveled in. 60% of our fans actually flew in from out of state. That's a big commitment. It's not just about buying tickets. It's about getting flights and hotels. And then once they were in market, how much they were actually spending on merchandise. So these were diehard fans. You know, we're expanding the arena, so we're making more room for them. But I think the conviction was, if you can build a really compelling product for television, it's going to lead to more masses supporting when we actually, you know, do show up in different cities, which will start this year. But to me, I don't know if it was as much as a surprise as much as where those fans were coming from.
Liz, how do you plan to take Unrivaled to the next level from fan awareness and an acquisition perspective?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is going to be expanding on all the work that was done last year and making sure that we continue to embrace the community that's embraced us, but also broadening the reach. I think one of the really cool evolutions in the sports landscape over the past, 15 years is it's less about what team you love and more about loving great athletic competition. I think that's one of, the really positive upsides of the legalization of sports betting, which I'm a little bit biased against, but I think that a lot of new fans have been introduced into the sports landscape, so we have to go out and capture those fans because this is an incredible format. It's very exciting, and if you love sports, you're going to love what we're showing at Unrivaled.
And part of what made Unrivaled so successful is those stories that you tell about the players. I mean, I think I can speak as a fan of it. That was something that I was so excited for every week. Alex, what did you learn about season one, like the kind of stories that actually resonate with players, fans, media partners?
Yeah, part of our conviction was what we could do via social media. It's the most direct-to-consumer platform. Even more so than broadcasting your games. You know, we have 14 games in which all our players play, but we have hundreds of hours a week with these athletes. And what I think drives fans, if you notice, All-Star Weekend is always a big part of seeing players interact with non-teammates. We had that for 10 straight weeks. So our ability to cross-pollinate with content and players who are both playing together in the WNBA, not playing together on Unrivaled, or vice versa, it just creates different headlines for us. And I think the thing that we've done really well from a social component is we listen to the fans, number one. We are big into reading comments. We try to be proactive with problem solving. We obviously listen to comments during the WNBA season. And then lastly, we let these storylines become very organic. We don't decide ahead of the year, these are the things that we're going to try to do. Here are the rivalries we want to try to promote. We let the competition and then the off-court and then the fans kind of lead us to what do they want to see more of or what do they want to see less of. And it's a pretty obvious answer from there.
Yeah. Were there any players or dynamics that fans especially latched onto last year that you were surprised about?
No, I think fan groups were created because of the identities that the players instilled in their teams. So, for instance, the Owls, we came up with all these team names. We didn't think that would turn into like the Hootie Hoo or the Rose with the Rosebuds. That was the identity of the team that then the fans adopted and it created an entirely new life of their own. And from that, then we created merch. We created alternative jerseys. It wasn't as smart as our team is. Some of these were not really driven by us. It was just driven by the market.
Which is so interesting. And Liz, you have a lot to work with. Given the current women's sports landscape, what do you think sets Unrivaled apart, and where are you looking to lean into with your marketing goals for the league this year?
Yeah, I think what Alex mentioned with the player buy-in is so important. You know, I've worked with a lot of athletes and personalities in my time, and the buy-in is easily the most important aspect to the success of any deal, and we have that in spades. I also think the timing of Unrivaled is really, really smart. Where they fall in the sports calendar, there allows Unrivaled to kind of carve out its own lane. And again, from the gaming side, that sort of week after the Super Bowl, during the NBA All-Star Week, that's like a terrible time because there's not much content to offer, and we can provide, really good content during that week. And I think the timing is really smart, and I think it's going to give us a lot to work with.
Alex, from launching a new league to now building a growing business and media platform, what's been the biggest mind shift that you've seen internally?
Internally, I don't know if there's a lot of shifting of mindset other than our timelines have expedited in a good way. And I think we hear a lot about, you have to make decisions that are scaling but sustainable. And I think if you look at the landscape of women's sports, it's a volatile market, right? And I think that's the reality of all these markets. It's, yes, there's the practical side of go slow, take your time, But then there's the reality of how quickly these markets are shifting and how quickly these players are growing. And for us, we always have to balance, when is the time to expand? When is the time to go to new markets? When is the time to, sign player X, Y, Z? So I think for us, it's just looking at, even though you have a blueprint you lay out, if new opportunities arise and our ability to move quickly, because we're a single entity, we have not sold teams. There's a number of people who want to buy teams, but for us right now, the core product is the athlete and the fans. And as long as we're answering to that and we can stay nimble and stay quick, I think it gives us a unique advantage that, when the time comes, we can pull some of these triggers. So I think it always comes back to, we do not operate like a traditional league. We are not a traditional league. We don't have to deal with, and I've heard Kathy speak about this a bit, and she's correct. We have such an ability to do different things and pay certain players a certain way because we don't have a CBA, as much as I love Terry and the union. We are athlete-owned. The largest majority group is our athletes. And we get to make decisions that aren't always going through 5 or 6 different mediums to get a yes. Right? We have a great investor group that believes in the long-term mission and knows that, there's decisions that we have to make that always takes care of the players, takes care of the fans, and of course, at the same time, you're driving great return for all of the investors. And that's what's interesting about this model is every decision we make that impacts the business, it also impacts the long-term financial gain of the athlete. So yes, it is an advantage, right? And I don't think we shy away from those things.
Speaking of growth, because I know you're just starting to touch on it, Alex, you've gone from a $35 million valuation a year ago, May 2024, to a huge leap forward that was announced last week at $340 million. What is driving that acceleration?
Revenue, to put it bluntly. I think it's the excitement around all these valuations. For us, we had to negotiate with a lead investor. We did not go out in the open market and try to raise more capital, unlike the first 2 rounds. We were very much focused on, okay, we got to build this correctly and scale. But then we just had the right investor group that, really was a win-win for both of us. So what's driving that is it's revenue, but any of these valuations are based on what is the opportunity long-term for return for investors, right? Like everyone has their own methodology or methods around how do we actually reach this number? Is it worth it for the investor that's paying for that amount? And inevitably, there are enough investors to say, yes, it's worth that amount. But I think it's strictly driven from the success we had year one, our blueprint to move forward. And then quite honestly, a big part of our process was how long do the athletes stay? How long are the athletes signed? And for us, we have a lot of very long-term deals for us. So I think that gives us this blanket of security to know that we're building the correct way, but also building with the numbers great, right? It's on paper. It doesn't mean anything just yet. It's a testament to what our team's done and what the players have done. But hopefully it's just a small stepping stone into where we're inevitably trying to go.
Amazing. Liz, when you look at the momentum that's happening, what excites you about that as a marketer? And where do you think Unrivaled can go next season?
There's so many exciting challenges with Unrivaled. Just the fact that the team is so small and we can move so quickly and we can have ideas and then execute on them the next day, that's really hard to find, especially at a company with a $340 million valuation. So I think that's a really rare and sort of exciting opportunity. I also, like I've mentioned a few times, I want to broaden the audience. We want to grow and get as many people to participate in Unrivaled, whether that's watching the games or engaging on social. We want people to get to know these players. We want to share the stories, and we want to showcase the incredible basketball that we're gonna have this year during our season 2. So I think, and I don't have a big budget also. Like all of that money that we're talking about, it's going back into the league. So what's a really exciting challenge for me is how do I get the maximum reach, the maximum awareness without spending, tons and tons of money. We have to be really efficient and thoughtful about where the money's going and make sure that, what we're doing is creative. And that's a really fun, and kind of rare opportunity to get as a marketer.
Sounds like a really fun challenge for you.
Yeah. Let's touch base in 6 months.
Yeah, sounds great. We'll check back in then. Alex, Unrivaled has outperformed in revenue. I know you were just speaking to that a little bit since launching. What opportunities has that opened up for you for season 2?
Yeah, well, it's allowed us to expand 2 more teams. You know, I think we came into this decision where, you know, some of the players you have to re-sign, some players are already on long-term deals, but we had a number, like 5 or 6 all-stars currently in the WNBA that we didn't have a spot for, and that's a problem, right? If we want to be a home for as many of the top players in the world, you have to know that there's going to be opportunities come, and you can't say yes to every one of them, but that's our thesis, right? We want to be the home of the best players. So our expansion decision was pretty simple. It was first and foremost, does this dilute our product? You know, we're very bullish that, right, you know, last year we had all-stars from the W coming off the bench on Unrivaled. And by expanding, we don't want to water down how great the experience is for the fans and what we can produce on TV. So to me, that was always number one. And then number two is we already knew there was a ton of interest on television from partners. So every decision I have to make is, as we scale and grow the business, which requires more expenses, I have to make sure we're underwriting that in revenue. So just the appetite from brand partners, we have a number of new partners we'll be announcing soon, but just the TV interest, it made it a very easy decision. It's easy for me to say, as speaking on behalf of our operations team. I don't think we're thrilled with me when we fully pulled the trigger, but these are things that, you know, you try to calculate as much as possible and then pull the trigger, and as Liz mentioned, you have to move quickly.
Speaking of growth, Alex, Unrivaled is adding 15,000 square feet, I believe, to your facility in Miami, and doubling down on player staff and resource. What else has evolved from season 1 to season 2 that fans and athletes will notice?
Yeah, we, you know, we're going to add more content people, so hopefully a lot more content that the fans can consume. Aside from that, you know, we'll have a bit of a redraft. You know, we have some players that remain with their teams, other players that go back to the pool to get redrafted, and obviously you're introducing new athletes that we'll be announcing starting next week. I think one of the main headliners so far that has been leaked out there is Paige Beckers. So you have to find the balance of, you know, spreading out the talent, reintroducing new teams, but not losing kind of your core identity with the 6 teams that have been established. And then aside from that, you know, it's a lot of new things, but it's just doubling down on where we were really good and learning from our mistakes, right? Like, you only see the great headlines, but, you know, you always, in any business, you have to kind of adapt and go through turbulence and learn from mistakes that were made. And I think, as Liz alluded to, you know, we had a great number of our consistency on television, but, you know, we want to grow that number, right? So you have to start thinking outside the box of how we market the league, how we cross-market, and we have an incredible partner in TNT. So our strategy, you know, I've been spending a lot of time with the Bleacher Report team, the House of Highlights team. You know, one thing I'm really proud of is our players' followers on social grew over 1 million for the 10 weeks that they were with us. So the impact that brings our league is, number one, great, but 2, their off-court value now is being driven up. So as long as we can continue to operate and innovate in that landscape and utilize our TV partner who has hundreds of millions of followers throughout social media, those are going to be the most, you know, direct ways to increase our market share.
I think it's pretty clear that from, you know, player arcs to production formats, Unrivaled is so unique in terms of your business model. How does your approach to IP and content set you apart from a traditional league?
Well, I read an interesting story that I think it was just a conviction to what I've been saying. Unlike every other major league, the players collectively have more followers than the teams. So I think that speaks directly. What is the value of the IP? The IP is the athlete, right? And the IP is also owners in our league. So, you know, it's like it's beating a dead horse, but it's just the truth. So our approach to what we have is not actually looking at the brand of the Lunar Owls or the Mist. It's about looking at what are the names on the back of the jerseys that now represent and build the identities of these teams. You know, Angel Reese, we just had dinner with her 2 weeks ago in Chicago. And I think everyone has different things that they want to accomplish during their time. How you build a brand and how you interact with that brand and how you do things differently for us probably is the direction that we have to continue to listen to our largest ownership group, right? I just can't make decisions in a vacuum and assume the players will be behind it. So every decision we make, we move quickly, but I have to make calls to say, hey, this is what we're thinking, here's why, here's the context. What do you think? Whether it's we're going to do it anyways or whether we're going to listen, there's this conversation that I think we've learned early the players want to be involved in, right? Even that we can't just assume that they're going to be behind it. So our approach to the IP is we have to be very concentrated that we're not abusing that power, right? So for instance, we have a number of great brand partners, and we have this incredible IP and talent and access to the talent and content, but we can't use that content to portray an endorsement to a brand that then lowers the value of that player in the open market. So I think about these things nonstop as we try to deliver for all of our partners, but make sure that we're not abusing the relationship that we built with the athlete. Because for me, as long as we keep that relationship really strong, where we can go is pretty unique.
Yeah, no, that's amazing to hear. Liz, as you'll be working closely with the Unrivaled leadership team, and you hear what Alex has to say about Unrivaled, what inspires you to take some untraditional paths when it comes to your role and responsibilities?
Yeah, I think just the newness of Unrivaled and the amount of unknowns that are out there. There's so many things that we haven't tried that could be really impactful, and I think that is, again, rare to find, especially when you're looking at live sports where there's so many established players. I think also thinking outside the box, like what Alex was talking about, the fact that we have IP and content at our disposal, and it's really good. You know, the content that we're producing is really, really strong. So how can I use that in a way that's going to stand out in what is a very crowded space? There's a ton of sports content out there right now. How can we make sure that we cut through the noise? That's going to be a really interesting challenge for me, but we have a lot of really creative people that I think can get us to a place where the Unrivaled content is continuing to grow, continuing to be an ambassador for the league, and make people really excited about what we're doing.
Excellent. We're coming up on time, so I want to ask you both a kind of last-minute question. Liz, let's start with you. What does success look like for season 2 for Unrivaled?
For me, very simply, success is more views. But I also think just increasing the awareness of what we're doing at Unrivaled, because they did the hard part last year by establishing this incredible league and establishing this format that's so interesting and exciting. So for me, I just need to get as many people as possible excited about it and even aware that it's happening.
Excellent. I think we're all in this room excited. Yeah. Alex, how about you? What would define success for season 2?
Yeah, obviously there's no secret for us internally. We have KPIs like viewership and growth and revenue. But I think a step beyond that, like we live in this very strange moment in time where there's this looming big CBA negotiation. We're growing and building. I think the way we've always approached it is our theory of how do we kind of impact women's basketball and then inevitably women's sports. I'm hopeful that what Unrivaled does is it lays a blueprint of just because things were done a certain way in the past does not mean the way that the current landscape of sports should be operating today, right? We've always looked at this as a very additive space of problem solving, right? Like we're just problem solving, and I think hopefully you see that now scale into other women's sports. You know, I'm naturally very curious. I had this incredible opportunity to be mentored by Kobe Bryant, and he would call up people he didn't even know and ask questions, and I think I adopted that. You know, so I called an agent of an NWSL player the other day, and I'm just fascinated with player brands. And to be clear, not that we're trying to get into women's soccer, we are not. But I'm curious, how do you use advantage of Trinity Rodman, who's now, dating Ben Shelton, but Trinity Rodman is a massive brand on her own. You have Sophia Smith, who's just pregnant and returning. Like, how do you take advantage of these players' brands and the fact that, unlike men who have been around a lot on the NBA side, they actually want to do content. They want to build their brand because it affects their off-court and off-field income. And how do you guys think about it in that way? And maybe I learned something that we didn't think about. So I think what success looks like for us is we have to continue to innovate. We have to continue to try to lead from the front. One thing I've told our team all the time is we are not a reaction-based business, right? So regardless of what happens in the ecosystem, we have a strategy that we have to lead, and hopefully the market reacts to what we're doing. And as long as we can continue to stay in that realm and do it in a responsible way, I think we'll continue to deliver.
Alex, Liz, thank you both for being here today. I think I speak for everyone in this room when we say we are so excited what season 2 has to bring, and hopefully we'll see you again on the stage next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.